everyone.
Recording in progress.
All right. We will try that without the echo. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, December 14th, 2024. At this time, in accordance with the California Government Code Section 54953E, in consideration of the coronavirus, members of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors and staff have the option to participate in this meeting via teleconference. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in person or observe the meeting electronically by accessing the meeting via the instructions that you have seen on the web page. Public comments may be sent in advance. The public will also have an opportunity to provide comments during the meeting. Members of the public participating remotely and using Zoom may comment during public comments or the applicable agenda item by using the raised hand feature, and you will be recognized by the chair. Those using the telephone audio-only feature should press star 9 on your phones to initiate the raised hand function in Zoom. You will then be announced unmuted, and your time to begin will speak. The public may provide comments on any matter listed on the agenda. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, the board chair may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker based on the number of speakers, the length of the agenda, and the complexity of the subject matter. Speaking time will not be decreased to less than 1 minute. And may we have a call to order, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. I will begin with you. Chair Gibbons.
Here.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Here.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Alternate Director Mekachuk.
Here.
Director Abikoga.
Here.
Director Walia.
Here.
Director Lee.
Present.
Thank you. Director Klein.
Here.
And participating remotely, we have Alternate Director Way.
Here.
Alternate Director Armendariz.
Here.
Thank you. Director Flagger.
Here.
Director Chua.
Here.
Thank you. And I will note that Director Martinez Beltran is absent, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to announce two factors. One is that item number 7 has been removed from the agenda. It'll be heard at another meeting. And following item number 8, there will be a closed session. So for board members and the public, we will adjourn to a closed session and then come back to this meeting to do any necessary reporting out and then close this meeting officially. The meeting closed session is a conference with legal counsel for one case of anticipated litigation. And at this time, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Chair Tyson.
Very good. Thank you, Chair Gibbons. I'd like to move on then to our adoption of resolutions commending our retiring directors and alternate directors, and I believe we would like to start off with a video.
"2022 was an amazing year for Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Under the leadership and guidance of our board of directors, we were able to achieve so much in our 5th year of operation. We would like to take this opportunity to honor and thank the SVCEA board of directors, specifically those that will not be returning in 2023. As you can see, there's been a lot of amazing work that has been accomplished by SVCE. Thank you so much for all the service, hard work, and dedication that you put in to guide us to these successes. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors and hope you will keep in touch with us as SVCE goes on to future success.
All right. That's quite the video and quite the high bar these departing directors leave for those of us who continue. With that, I would like to move directly to address those departing directors. We have alternate directors Gustav Larson and Mariko Sayok. And then we also have departing directors John Willey, Nisa Flieger, Javed Alahi, and Liz Gibbons. And some of these people are not present, but some of them are. So if Gustav can come up here, I have a proclamation to present to him. And you know what? In the interest of time, well, did you want to say a few words?
I just very briefly, it's been such an honor to serve with all of you. Looking around at the board, I see so many faces of people I deeply respect and am also friends with, which is wonderful. And I also am very impressed with the staff. To be part of an organization that is so deeply, genuinely committed to decarbonization has been a tremendous opportunity. So thank you very much. And I'm so glad that the entire organization is in such good hands moving forward. Thank you.
Our very own Javed Alahi. Go ahead if you have a few words.
Thank you so much. It's really been a privilege and honor to serve on this body. I mean, people say about public agencies that they waste time and they don't accomplish anything. Totally wrong. This agency ran like a new IPO and it has done a great job. Great directors and great staff. And thank you so much. And also, one thing Girish had said earlier that Montecino has punched above its weights. It's my privilege to have Brian Makachek represent Montecino. He's already been an alternate for the last 2 years, and I think he and Burton Craig, who was one of the founders of this organization. So Montecino is happy to contribute its best now to continue serving this agency. Thank you.
And let's go ahead with the final one. I'm going to come right up here. Clearly, I practiced this. And our very own chair, Liz Gibbons. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you all very much, and those of you who know me know I'm very rarely at a loss for words, but tonight is one of those rarities. I have said earlier that this group, as you've heard, is a standout in terms of public service, and it has been my honor to be able to work with such an incredible board, past, present, and the staff, same past and present, because of the innovation and openness, the transparency, the incredible amount of knowledge and the hard work that you staff do to help us as your board members become informed, know what the business of energy procurement and serving our customers is all about, so that we can make the best decisions possible for climate, the future. And I said earlier, and I do mean this, I feel like I've earned a PhD from everything that you've been there to teach us. And the sharing and the transparency and the innovation, the willingness to go outside the box and look for new ways to service our customers, save our customers money, educate our customers, have programs that really recognize and meet the diversity of our customers, from Google down to our low-income families living in housing complexes. So I can't possibly cover all of the incredible sense of pride and honor I have. And as an architect, the REACH codes meant a great deal to me, and that was because of this group. And I want to thank each and every individual staff. I know I'm going to miss some people, so I will at least say to CEO Balachandran, to CFO Amrit Singh, and to COO Monica, where is Monica? Padilla, there you are. And everyone else, and there are members here who've been here from the beginning with me. I know Dawn and Pamela have been here from the beginning. And Angela, well, you know, Angela, the world wouldn't turn without Angela. So I think, I said Angela, see, I'm nervous. Andrea, thank you all on behalf of the board and all of our future members. I know that you will take very, very good care of them, even if I'm not here, and George is there to provide some guidance.
Thank you so much for those wonderful words, Liz. We also have with us, although I cannot hand her a resolution in person, but Nisa Flieger is with us on the screen. And Nisa, if you have anything you'd like to say, this would be a good opportunity.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tyson, and I'll try to be brief. I'm also losing my voice. But thank you so much. As so many have already said, it's been an honor to serve on the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board. Thanks to former Director Bruins, former Los Altos City Council member, for recruiting me to serve on this board. I still remember my first year as a director, primarily because of all the reading I did and that I needed to do, because it would take a couple of reads for me to really grasp how everything worked. Because of course you come in thinking, you believe in climate change and we all have a role to play in combating climate change, but SVCE does so much more and is so much more than that. And it's also a little technical, just a little. I do miss those cheat sheets that we would have on the desk when we met in person. They were super helpful. But I loved every single moment of it because I love learning, and it was another opportunity to learn and grow in a new area. I also believe in the mission of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and more importantly, how we carry out that mission of aiming to bring clean energy to all in our service area through programs, funding, initiatives, and education. The most special part of serving on the board, of course, is the people, both board members and staff. You're all so incredibly talented and smart. I have no idea how Girish does it every time, but he's always able to recruit top talent. Always impressed with the resumes that come before us. Special thanks and recognition, and we just heard it from Chair Gibbons, for Andrea, who's the best at what she does, and she does it with a smile. And of course, Girish, I don't know why I'm butchering your name tonight, or top-notch CEO, his ability to simplify the complex, translate our questions, empower his staff, quickly pivot and produce what the board has asked for, and keep SVCE as one of the leaders in the industry is all truly remarkable. Thank you, board members, for your friendship and support. Although I will not be on the board anymore, I will still be around and passionate about your mission and continue to be a big supporter. I wish you all the best over the next 5 years. I am leaving you in very good hands with our Mayor, Sally Meadows. but I'll be watching and cheering you on. And thank you so much. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisa. I think it would make sense for us to go ahead with a motion to approve the resolutions commending these people. If I can get somebody to give me a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And I've got a motion and a second, so I'd be looking now for comments. Any additional comments from board members? Member Walia, please. Director Walia.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tyson. I joined this group almost 2 years ago, and Nisa put it beautifully. There's a lot to learn. You believe in the mission, but there is so much to learn. And what a phenomenal team we have here at SVCE, led by Girish. I'm going to talk about the directors who are leaving. There's a lot I can say about the staff, the phenomenal staff, but I'll focus on the directors. Liz, you have been phenomenal. Your leadership is just outstanding. As a fellow architect, seeing your passion about the built environment and to tie it up with reducing greenhouse gases, the emissions, you have showed me yet another path how all these things are interconnected. Thank you. Your dedication, commitment is just phenomenal. And you know what? I have a request. Please don't stop sending the emails. Maybe not to Girish. I would love to see them. I may not read everyone, but I would love to look at the information. I was talking earlier with Director Rennie about completely different issue. It's the knowledge base that counts. In any group that we work in, how we learn from each other, it goes a long way, so that there's a sense of continuity, the reason behind how we landed at a certain place and how we keep that going to constantly improve, evolve, and keep serving the residents, which is what binds each one of us together. And you have a lot that you can share with us. Thank you, Liz. And Director Elahi, there's a lot I have learned with you, from you. Director Larson, I met you on Zoom almost 2 years ago, and there was an affinity, the way you explained things, it helped me. You spoke a language that I could follow very easily, especially as far as SVCE is concerned, because this was very technical. Nisa, you're not going anywhere, so I will talk with you personally a lot. Really, this is a phenomenal group, and each director brings a lot to this group. And I will touch upon another aspect I was sharing with somebody yesterday. In our own cities, we are looking at issues, 5 of us are looking at issues, especially from our constituents' perspective. But a group like this, a startup-run group, Girish, phenomenal work. I have learned the perspective from different cities in the Bay Area. It's like a large family that we are working together. That has helped me not just serve SVCE, it has helped me serve my residents in Saratoga much better, because I learned from each one of you at every single meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Walia. Do we have Director Abekoga?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just wanted to also offer my thanks to our departing board members. It's been a real honor to serve with all of you. I came, I guess, the second year, so I was under the mentorship of Liz and the founding group, and it's been a great ride. It's just really amazing. I think Javed, called it an IPO startup, and most people know government as slow moving, but This has been a fast ride and a good one, sometimes the roller coaster, but I really appreciate all of you. Gustav, you've been a great friend. All of you have been so good. And Javed, we'll definitely miss you, but I just want to say, and Nisa too, I know you'll be around, but just want to say thank you to all of you. It's really great that we have this common vision, and that we're able to, share that despite our different and diverse communities that we represent. And I think this organization really shows what we can do when we work together and collaborate. And thanks to all of you for your dedication for so many years. And please continue to, stay in touch, advise us, root for us, and we will do the same with all of you. So thank you again.
All right. Director Rennie?
Thank you. I want to start off by thanking all the outgoing directors and alternate directors. As all of you know, we get assignments as council members, and some of those assignments you're like, okay, I'm going to show up and maybe not be too passionate and maybe not read very thoroughly and so forth. But I know that everybody that comes to this organization came here because they were passionate about it. Some people talk about getting recruited, but they were recruited because they were some of the best on their council. So everybody that's been a director through here has had the passion to dig in and understand. As you've heard, there's a lot to learn, but all of you have dug in and contributed, and I really appreciate how much work each has done as they've come up to speed. Chair Gibbons and I came in as founding board members a long time ago, it seems like now, and she's had passion from the beginnings. In the beginning it was more about talking about our mission and creating our strategy, and she was dug in and was passionate from the beginning. Where I really saw her dig in and work was in the beginning when we formed our risk oversight committee. Really, it was all the engineers, because we really dig into the technical details of the organization. And then as some of our early engineering board members left, we needed to start recruiting some new members, and Liz stepped in, and being an architect, I think it was helpful, but not as helpful as being an engineer to step into that. So I was there, through Liz asking lots of questions, never let anything go by that she didn't understand, so that now, even though she's not an engineer, she's an expert on our risk oversight committee, and she's going to be missed there in addition to in the boardroom. So thank you for all of your passion and hard work to become a great chair.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Director. All right. Oh, go ahead, Director Lee.
I'll be quick. I mean, all the accolades is absolutely very much has been said, and very, very well deserving. Chair Gibbons, thanks for your leadership from the very get-go when this started. I still remember attending the many community meetings before the formation of SVCEA. It's like, what? We really can do this? Wow, this is wild stuff. But you know what? This is exactly the type of Silicon Valley spirit that came together, and thank you for your leadership and many of the directors who started from the beginning and many of those who served. I just want to say, as one of the newest member here, that not only the caliber of the staff that is truly superb. I saw many boards just like Director Rennie says, and this is one of my favorite by far, because I know how well it's running, and that is one that you could actually tell the public that this will save you money. I mean, when we talk about saving, okay, first is 1%, now about 2%. Hey, wait, wow, we're going to 4% of your electric bill. This is something that people could really appreciate, and we'll be voting for some of these very important votes down the road. But we really could tell it's not just the day-to-day organization. This is from the vision. I want to thank those of you who started from the beginning, because by you starting back in 2016 and signing those contracts early on to buy these at the wholesale level, That's with the pricing, the inflation going up. That early contract that you sign, it's going to save us money, millions, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, for many, many years to come. So I just want to say thank you for all that hard work to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I see we also have a hand up from Director Chua.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I don't know where to begin. I mean, I'm one of the newest members here, and for some reason, I got really close to most of you, like Chair Liz and Nisa, and I echo what everybody said. But one thing that I want to say, I'm gonna miss you all. So please keep in touch, and thank you for the talent, for the commitment. I've never worked with I've never been on a board where there's so much smart people. So there's a lot to learn, and I'm still learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Let's move to Alternate Director Hung Wei.
I really want to say, as an alternate, I've been trying to listen into every meeting, even with the board, executive board meeting, and I've learned so much by just staying on the sideline and listen and learn about Silicon Valley Clean Energy. I am not leaving this board. I will still be the alternate, but I'll miss all of your wisdom. But I've learned so much from all of the departing board members. So thank you so much. I know we'll see each other very often too.
Great, thank you. And congratulations, Madam Mayor. With that, let me open it up to the public. If there's anybody, a member of the public that wishes to speak. I do not see any in the room. Do we have any hands raised? We do not. And so with that, we have a motion and a second. And so I'd like to go ahead with the roll call vote.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I will begin with our chair. Chair Gibbons?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Director Rennie?
Aye.
Makachuk?
Aye.
Abe Koga?
Aye.
Walia?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Way?
Aye.
Armendariz?
Yes.
Flagger?
Yes.
Chua?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries with Director Martinez Beltran absent.
Very good. The motion carries. And then I believe now would be the best time to go ahead and get that photo of the recipients following their adoption. And would that be right here, you think? Our photographic expert will direct you. So. Thank you very much. That was some very inspiring presentations. And as I said earlier, I think we have big shoes to fill. And with that, I will now let the reins of power transfer back to Chair Gibbons.
That could be a dangerous thing. So we will now move on to the agenda, which will begin with public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. The public may provide comments on any matter not listed on the agenda, provided that it is within the subject matter jurisdiction of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, the board chair may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker based on the number of speakers, the length of the agenda, and the complexity of the subject matter. Speaking time will not be decreased to less than 1 minute. Are there any members of the public in our audience wishing to speak on a non-agendized item? I see none. Are there any online? We see none. Therefore, we will move on to the consent calendar. This is an action item, and we have items 1A through 1I. Is it 1J? 1J. And is it on I? Thank you. I don't have my glasses on. Are there any questions on the consent calendar from the board? Online, seeing none. Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none in the audience and none online. May we have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Yes, Director
Madam
Rennie.
Chair, I'll move the consent calendar consisting of items 1A through 1I.
Second, Abikoga.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Rennie, seconded by Director Abikoga. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Again, I'll begin with you, Chair Gibbons.
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Director Rennie.
Aye.
Director Makachuk.
Aye.
Abikoga.
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Klein.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Way.
Aye.
Armendariz.
Aye.
Fliger.
Yes.
Chua.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries with Director Martinez-Beltran absent.
Thank you. We'll now go to the regular calendar. We have item number 2, which is the CEO report. Director Balachandran.
Thank you, Chair Gibbons. This is going to be short, but very important. I'd like to introduce the newest member of our team. Her name is Sangeeta Kumar, and she joined SVCE on December 1st. She'll be reporting to Rebecca Fang in our decarbonization data group. And Sangeeta is our new decarbonization data engineer, and she's going to be maintaining SVC's data warehouse and many other things related to data. And you're going to get some exciting reports. So I'm going to hand it over to Sangeeta to introduce herself to you.
Okay, great. Can everyone hear me? Okay, awesome. Sorry about the lot of lights in my apartment. But it's really great to be here. Hi, I'm Sangeeta. I'm a data engineer. I recently finished my PhD in civil engineering, and I come from a background in looking at the intersection of health and energy. I also worked in consulting, doing data and modeling support for projects on outdoor air quality and exposure science. And with the big push for decarbonization right now, I felt that I was in line with this whole nexus of health and energy. And I've always been really passionate about applying data to inform policy and standards. And so I'm really excited to help serve your communities. And it's also nice to hear a lot of people who are also very excited about buildings in the room as well. Yeah, I grew up mostly in North Carolina, so on the opposite coast. And in my free time, I love being outdoors, hiking and biking. I also love cooking and doing crafts as well. So really excited to get to work with you all in the future and hopefully help make a lot of data-driven decisions for your community. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome, Sangeeta. I must say that one of the things we've been talking about this evening is how much we've all learned being here on the board. And my appreciation for data has really expanded. No ifs, ands, or buts. So having you come on board to support staff and really help the board with data is going to be marvelous. So thank you for joining us. And the board will see you soon.
Chair Gibbons, that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. Brief but succinct, as you said. We now go to regular calendar item number 3, approve the 2023 Legislative Policy Platform and identify focus areas for the 2023 Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. This is an action item, and the presentation will be by Benna Chang, Senior Government Affairs Manager.
Good evening, Board. Thank you so much. Again, Benna Chang, Senior Government Affairs Manager for SVCE, here to talk about the 2023 Policy Platform and the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. So tonight we're really requesting the board's support of the 2023 Policy Platform and its authorization of the creation of the Ad Hoc Committee. Before we dive into the Policy Platform, I thought it'd just be helpful to step a minute back and talk about our last legislative session. It was really a historic session with a lot of funding both at the state and federal levels, but we think there's significant policy challenges that still remain for the next year. So as you all know, in 2022, the federal government passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really historic, once in a career kind of funding from the federal level on climate change and clean energy issues. And at the same time, the state budget also had a very significant $53.9 billion commitment on climate change and energy. So very, very exciting. At the state level, a lot of the focus was around reliability issues. The governor created a strategic reliability reserve through the state budget to really address some of the challenges the grid has during the summer heat wave peaks. And then also the legislature and the governor decided to extend the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. And again, both of these things just speak to the state's focus on reliability as we go through this clean energy transition. As we look to 2023, we think that the state will continue its really ambitious clean energy goals, again with a focus on how to deliver and implement those goals, as well as keeping the lights on that reliability challenge. So we anticipate there'll be a lot more conversations and discussions about interconnection, transmission challenges, as well as that reliability issue. On the state budget side, unfortunately the state's legislative analyst's office is projecting a roughly $25 billion shortfall. So this is a pretty big swing from the big revenue projections that the state had beforehand. So we anticipate that the state will be looking at some creative funding options to either delay some of the commitments that they have made in the past or use federal money to supplement some of the state commitments as well. But we are not anticipating a very rosy picture at the state budget side. At the same time, this is a huge first-year legislator class that's coming in, one of the most diverse in the state's history. About a third of the legislators will be new, so there's a really big learning curve for the state's legislators as well, especially on energy issues. So there's a lot of work for organizations like SVCEA to do. We are also looking at a potential new speaker, Robert Rivas, which is one of our delegation members, is in line to become the Speaker of the Assembly. And then we'll be seeing new committee chairs and committee memberships as well. At the federal level, as you know, the Republicans have taken over the House, so we do expect to see some changes there, especially with an increased oversight of some of the federal agencies that may or may not delay some of the implementation of these really historic funding packages. So that as context, I wanted to shift to our 2023 draft legislative policy platform. So the policy platform is really a principles and policy document that guides the legislative positions of SVCE throughout the year. This year we did a relaunch process where we conducted a lot of internal and external stakeholder conversations, including with many of our delegation members, to figure out what people's priorities were and what issues we could forecast that were coming up for this next year. So you'll see in your board packet the policy platform that we are proposing for this year. A lot of it was formatting changes. So we put in higher level descriptions of the policies and we added new sections about policy examples to give you a better sense of what exactly we were talking about when we are mentioning these high level principles. And then we also had a really great session with the ad hoc committee of the board where there was a lot of good conversation and feedback about some of the challenges you're seeing in your communities. And so we have added and enhanced sections around interconnection delays, distribution equipment failures, and workforce training as examples. So to dive into a little bit more detail on the policy platform, here are the top 3 issues that we see really being the focus at the state and at the federal level for next year. That includes a clean, reliable grid. So again, this is the legislature's sort of focus on having a reliable electric system, including the smart build-out of the distribution grid, addressing interconnection barriers and the equipment failures that we have unfortunately seen in our service territory. Secondly, we have a policy platform item around climate change mitigation and fuel switching. So this is really the work that we see to advance our decarbonization mission at SVCE. So what can the state and the federal government do to really accelerate that work and remove any of the barriers that we're seeing locally around decarbonization? And included here is the clean energy workforce development efforts. We know that that is really important, that there are people to deliver all of this work. And so we've added that into the policy platform as well. And then finally, we have what we call the competitive equity do no harm section, which is really kind of similar to what you and your member agencies call local control. So this is really making sure that SVCE can continue to follow the CCA model of local government governance, and then having some flexibility so that we have local authority and discretion to figure out how we're going to meet statewide and federal goals. There are additional policy areas in the platform as well around health impact and safety, equity, and affordability and rates, where a lot of these are interconnected with some of the top 3 goals that or policy platform items that I just mentioned before. So with that, I want to transition to the creation of the 2023 Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. So tonight we're asking for the board's approval to establish this Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. And really the purpose of this is to help increase the engagement between the board and staff on legislative issues. It's a forum for us to talk about the things that are happening in Sacramento and DC and to get input and feedback that will help guide our positions and our strategies. So with that, again, we're asking for 2 actions tonight to approve the 2023 policy platform and create the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Benna. Are there any questions from the board here in the chamber or online? I see no hands raised. Are there any questions from the public here? I see none. Any questions from the public online? Seeing none from online, we'll come back to the board with a question from Director Mekachek.
Yes, you mentioned interconnection issues. Could you just describe that a little bit so that we have a better understanding? Thank you.
Sure. And we really think about it in terms of 2 ways. One is around our utility scale renewable projects and getting them connected to the grid. And then also a lot of local interconnection challenges. So we've heard a lot from board members at this meeting and other meetings in the past about some of the challenges your constituents are facing as they go through electrifying their home, for example, or their business. And so we're really trying to tackle it from both sides.
I'm very pleased to see that on the agenda.
Yes, Director Rennie.
Not question. I want to comment. I'm looking at our policy areas, and I think it's a really good list. I see a lot of interconnection between them. There's a lot of connections kind of behind the scenes. Particularly we want to support a clean and reliable grid, and there's a lot of regulation kind of stuff coming at us that can add a lot of cost. And if we get hit with a lot of cost, we have to pass it on. So that's really related to affordability and rates. So there's this tightrope that we're walking between trying to be, push the climate change envelope, the reliability envelope, but also keeping it affordable for people as we want to electrify things. If it's not kept affordable, then there's a discouragement to electrify, which, so there's so many things in here that interconnected. And then you get down to the equity is an important one, because a lot of times we think in terms of we want to incentivize certain things to happen, and often that's done through maybe tax credits or things that benefit the rich, and it's really subsidized off the lower end of people. Sometimes poor can get cares and fares can get subsidies themselves, but those that are maybe just above that may suffer from an equity issue where we're trying to incentivize things. So I think this is a really good list that helps us walk the fine line between all the pieces that are going on. So I fully support this.
Thank you. We are in discussion. Any more discussion from the board here in the room? Yes, Director Flygore.
Thank you, Chair Gibbons, and thanks, Benna, for that presentation. I just wanted to underscore the point you made about what the state budget will look like this year, completely 180 from last year. I was at a Cal Cities board retreat a couple of weeks ago, and this was one of the topics that everybody was curious about with the limited funds going into 2023. Where will be the priorities and the focus be for the governor and Sacramento? And so I just want to support the committee and your point, Benna, about ensuring that, if for whatever reason the funding isn't there to support all the initiatives that have been proposed, that somehow there are ways for them to delay some of the requirements that will be placed on local governments. So I just thought that was a very important point. It's something I know many jurisdictions are concerned about. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Flygore. Also, I would like to say, very nice presentation. Succinct and well organized. We can now understand what the importance of a legislative policy platform is, and how this board, and through its own actions and through consolidated actions with other Cal CCA organizations, can make a difference. And we've established a great relationship with our existing and new legislative people, and I'm very pleased with that. I think some of the comments that have been made, I think it's interesting that we've used interconnectability in two different ways. We've used interconnectability in terms of how all the program elements feed into each other, and interconnectability specifically related to the physical connection of the grid new services to our residents, and the stumbling blocks that are happening there. So I'm very pleased with the list, and I thank the board, ad hoc committee, and staff for putting, I think, a very solid platform together. With that, we would have a roll call vote. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Rennie and a second by Director Lee. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Chair Gibbons.
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
Makachuk.
Aye.
Abekova.
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Klein.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Way.
Aye.
Armendariz.
Aye.
Flagger.
Yes.
Chua.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries with Director Martinez Beltran absent.
Thank you very much. We will now go to item number 5, which is an update of the hybrid meeting requirements. Oops, did I skip one? I skipped one. Number 4. I want this meeting to be over. I know. Item number 4, adopt a resolution to increase Silicon Valley Clean Energy's generation rate discount and dedicate funding for an electrification discount rate and multifamily direct install program. This is also an action item, and we'll have staff speaking. Dawn Bray, Director of Strategic Development, and I think you're going to be joined by others. Okay, Adam, Director of Energy Services and Community Relations.
All right, thank you, Chair Gibbons, and good evening, directors. As you know, November and December of every year for SVCE is rates season. It's this time of year when PG&E really begins to hone in and ultimately finalize their generation rates and their PCIA rate. And then we use that information to think about what our discount will be for the following year and what our exact rates will be. So that's our topic tonight, and it's going to come to you in sort of two separate sections. Firstly, we're going to talk about what our assumptions were for our discount for next year, and those assumptions were built into our approved budget for FY23. We're also going to talk about some good news in that financial projections have improved since that time, so there's some additional money available potentially to deepen that discount that we had planned. The second part of the conversation is, if we're going to do that, how do we do it? And we'd like to propose a new way of thinking about discounting that will further incentivize electrification as part of that. I'm going to kick things off, and then Peter Mustasic, who'll be presenting from home, he's going to take us through an analysis that was done. He's one of our energy service leads. And then Adam's going to finish up with our recommendation.
Thank you, Peter, for joining us.
If we can have the next slide, please. Next one after that. So given our general financial projections back at the time that we set the budget, our assumption would be that we would move from a 1% discount that we're currently at to a 2% discount. In addition, we would continue our program of providing rebates to CareFira customers that accounts to basically another 10% discount for them off of their discounted CareFira rates. So that takes them to a total discount in the neighborhood of 35 to 40%. The cost of doing that essentially represents a percentage point of discount. So if we were not to do the CareFira discount, we'd be at a 3% discount across the board. So that 2% for all customers, 10% for CareFira, that's our current plan. And what was also assumed in the budget is that as of now, we'd know more about what next calendar year looks like, and we would revisit this question of our overall discount. Next slide, please. So the good news is that our latest projections are showing that we may have another $30 million available for expenditure. If you look at the left box, we're showing a net additional contribution to reserves of about $24 million. If you look at the right box, if we run this through our stress test process, I say it's our F&A group with Amrit, we see that we have about $30 million in room in the budget for additional expendish. If you have questions on this, I'm sure Amrit will be happy to answer those. They're way above my pay grade. But this is the bottom line. We have another $30 million. Next slide, please. Next slide after that. So as I mentioned, we want to think about a different way of doing this discounting, and this timeline shows relevant activities that are rate related, both on the SVCE side and the PG&E side, that really surround our decision tonight. We put together these ideas on an electrification related discount in the October and November timeframe. We did share that with the executive committee. They were supportive of the idea. As of December 1st, PG&E is releasing a new, what they call electric home rate. And you're going to hear about that again later tonight. But we're going to propose to immediately add that to our rate sheet at our current discount of 1%. This electric home rate's interesting because to get on the rate, you have to have a heat pump or you have to have an EV. And it's the first time there's really been a rate that's been heat pump dependent. So this gives us an opportunity to think about a way that we can incentivize our interaction with customers to do that sort of thing. The middle circle here, of course, is tonight. If we look out another few weeks, we will get the final rates from PG&E as of the end of the month, and then by January, mid-January, we've applied the discount that we decide on tonight. That goes into the billing system, and we're off to the races with our new discount for next year. Next slide, please. Next slide after that. So the fundamental decision here tonight is, should SVC consider a modified discounting approach that further promotes electrification? This is a strategic focus area for us. It's actually a couple of strategic focuses for us in 2023. Doubling down on our electrification value proposition and leveraging SVC's balance sheet to provide financing solutions for customers. So how can we best deploy this $30 million? If we did the same thing we did in the past and we wanted to apply this in the form of a discount, we would just deepen our discount across the board to all customers. Or alternatively, we could take a hybrid approach this year and do some of that. So maybe deepen our overall discount somewhat, but we can also think about some very targeted additional discounting beyond that or other programmatic efforts to really further incentivize electrification. So that's the tee up. I'm going to turn it over to Peter now, who will take you through the analysis and the options that we're thinking about.
Great, thanks, Don. Good evening to all the members of the board and my colleagues out there. I wish I could have joined you in person, but wasn't in the cards for tonight, but I'm still happy to be talking with you here. Next slide, please. So yeah, we'll pause here for a minute and just, so we've talked a lot about reach codes, and reach codes have been a really great, successful effort that we've continued in collaboration with our jurisdictions. But the focus has really been on new construction for reach codes. And as we start to think about policy to support reach codes for existing buildings, and we've been talking a lot around what are potential obstacles, and one that keeps coming up for existing homes is potential bill impact. And so partly to, as Don said, to further the reach of our electrification measures, and also partly as a policy backstop to support existing building electrification, we've really been digging into what are potential bill impacts of electrification to existing homes who don't have solar to kind of lock in lower electric rates. Next slide, please. And what we've seen from research is that in many cases, electrifying major appliances, space and water heating, may result in modest increases in customers' monthly energy bills. Our customer programs have really focused on upfront electrification project costs to make electric retrofits competitive with gas replacement. But we have an opportunity through a more strategic kind of electrification discount to try to do the same thing on the bill side. And we kind of see this, that we could accomplish this through two related ways. And the first is to increase awareness around PG&E's new electric home rate. And the second is to really go deeper on that rate by providing a larger discount to customers who qualify to be on the electric home rate to really help push them towards bill neutrality or bill savings. The next slide, please. So we dug deeper and did a lot of internal analysis based on real customer aggregated data to try to wrap our arms around this. And what we found is that when we go from a mixed fuel home, as we see on the left bar, with electric cost in blue and a gas cost in orange, and this is a monthly combined utility bill that we're looking at here. When we go from that first bar on the left to the second bar, that represents electrifying that home while staying on the same POUC rate, the most common residential rate. And our conservative modeling was showing a $40 a month bill increase, which is obviously very significant. However, when we keep moving to the third bar from the left, when we change that home to the new PG&E's new electric home rate, it really cuts down on that significantly. However, we still do remain somewhere around $5 or $6 a month above where we started. And so we have an opportunity to then, by doing a discount of around 10%, we can get into cost neutral or even cost savings territory through that strategic discount. And I do want to pause here and say that what we say 10% here, we're talking about an average discount. I do want to say the new electric home rate is a time of use rate. And so it does have peak from 4 to 9, and it does have off peak and partial peak. And I want to highlight that it's fully our intention to be creative with the discount. So rather than just doing 10% across all TOU periods. We really want to dig into the potential to do less of a discount on peak rate and really go heavy on the off-peak. And by doing that, we increase the differential between the peak and off-peak, and it's really incentivizing the kind of beneficial electrification that we want to encourage. Next slide, please. So as part of this, we've been talking a lot about, would this discount apply to NEM customers? And ultimately, our recommendation is that NEM customers not be eligible for the electrification discount. And this is really mirroring PG&E's requirements, because as it currently stands, NEM customers aren't eligible for the new electric home rate. As Don mentioned, the qualifications for the new electric home rate are that have to be a residential customer with at least a heat pump, space or water heater, an EV, or a battery charged by the grid. But NEM customers won't initially be eligible. PG&E plans to launch a phase 2 of the electric home rate sometime in the summer of next year, at which point they plan to extend the electric home rate to NEM customers. And so our intention is to revisit NEM eligibility at that time to really, once we can really understand what PG&E's accommodations have been for NEM customers. But I will say that we do at this time anticipate that the new electric home rate really won't incentivize adoption by NEM customers. A part of the new electric home rate is a fixed $15 a month charge. And we really feel that that is going to probably dissuade a lot of NEM customers from switching over to the new rate. The new rate is really designed to reduce winter heating costs. So that I think really electric space heating was in mind behind the design of the new rate. And I would just add one more point that, by not including NEM customers, as I mentioned, they already have locked in lower electricity costs. And so we really believe that this will promote adoption and participation in the discount by customers who are more average income, who are electrifying a piece at a time, but who don't necessarily have the deeper funding to do everything up front. A lot of times we see when money is less of an issue that solar tends to be the first, if not one of the very first steps towards electrification. Next slide, please. So as important as we feel like this discount is, we've been talking a lot about who would it benefit and which customers would be left behind. And really, when this kind of boils down to who has the financial means and the ability to modify their home, which is primarily going to be single-family home owners who can take advantage of an electrification discount. And the customers who will be the most left behind will be low-income customers who can't afford electrification, and particularly residents living, renting in apartment buildings, since they don't have the authority or permission to modify their home. Next slide, please. So in looking at this in more detail, we looked at it through the SVCEA lens, which is an equity framework that we find really meaningful and valuable in program design. As a reminder, it's the Socioeconomic Vulnerability Index. And in addition to factoring in income, it also looks at other important factors like unemployment, education, language barriers, and a percent of household income that's spent on things like utilities. And so, not surprisingly, the majority of single-family homeowners live in SVCEAs 1 and 2, which are the more affluent, educated communities. And the majority, about 2/3 of renters in multifamily buildings live in SVCEAs 3 and 4, which are the more disadvantaged communities. And next slide, please. So to address this electrification gap for low-income renters, SVCE is in the process of designing a multifamily direct install program, which is currently has $2 million allocated to it. And a direct install program is essentially a turnkey solution where we provide funding, we partner with an implementer, they go out and they find site participants, and at very low or no cost to the building owners, they come in and do the retrofit. And this has been a really effective way of reaching low-income multifamily buildings and providing renters with free upgrades. The way that our program is currently envisioned, renters would only qualify if they currently have gas heating. And so it was really kind of envisioned around decarbonization and maximizing fuel switching. So something that has come to our attention as part of the electrification discount design was that 40% of renters in our territory currently have electric resistant heating. And so therefore they wouldn't be eligible to participate in the direct install program. And again, these are mostly renters in low income areas. So in addition, we feel like it's really important in tandem with an electrification discount to really think about growing the size of our direct install program so that we can reach more low-income customers. But in addition to that, we think there's an opportunity to also broaden the qualification criteria to help some of these renters who don't currently qualify. Next slide, please. So if we broaden our qualification criteria to include electric heating retrofits, we could potentially reach significantly more low-income customers. And so the picture on the left here, we see electric resistance baseboards, and probably a lot of us are familiar with these and have lived with this technology at one point in time. And so you probably know they're very inefficient and extremely expensive to use. Or we've heard stories or lived the tale of only heating a single room in an apartment in the winter because it's so expensive to heat the whole apartment. And the other downside for renters is that they don't have any other options. Even if they could afford to rip them out of the wall and replace them, they don't have the ability to do that in a rental unit. So by switching through a direct install program, by switching baseboards to modern heat pump technology, we can cut winter heating bills by up to 2/3. And then we also have the benefit that heat pumps are reversible, so we would also be providing air conditioning to a lot of apartments that wouldn't currently have it. And finally, this would open up other opportunities like qualifying for electrification and other rates that would be offered to customers with heat pumps. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it off to Adam Sullivan to recap our recommendations to the board.
Thank you. So let me review the overall proposal. Number one is to increase SVC's overall discount rate. Sorry. Is that better? Two is a two-part recommendation. One, fund a new electrification discount, 10% discount from PG&E's new electric home rate, and set aside funds so that this can be available to customers for approximately 5 years, depending on kind of volumes we see. But with current estimates, we have the potential to reach 50,000 customers. And expand the multifamily direct install program, increasing the budget so that we can provide electric heating retrofits to as many customers as possible. In addition to that, thanks to the executive committee's advice and feedback, we'd like to be able to have some flexibility to move money between items to A and to B based on findings as we go through them. Next slide, please. We did review several options, and I'd like to kind of reinforce some of the decision-making framework that we used. One is our general mission. We felt that providing a overall flat increase to the generation discount to all customers would not fit with what we want to get done here. And really what that is encourage behaviors that bring our customers into a world where it is more valuable to move your energy use off of the peak times, and will become increasingly so. This is only one step in that process. With that said, we went down and wanted to make sure that we're encouraging the right behaviors as far as equipment purchases. If there is cost parity between electric heat pump equipment and its gas counterparts, we're more likely to incent the market in that direction and push the supply-demand curve in the right place. We very much recognize that customers who are installing new heat pump air conditioners and water heaters and PV systems and electric vehicles are going to be of the more affluent of our service territory. And in order to provide these same opportunities to the rest of our customers, we decided to extend this multifamily direct install program, providing the same benefits of environmental comfort, indoor air quality, and clean energy to everyone in our service territory. Because of those metrics, we landed on alternative 3 here, which is providing a 4% discount to the overall SVC customer base, setting aside $9.5 million to fund an electrification discount for 5 years. That is a slow ramp building up to a 32,000 customer participant group, and another $9.5 million to expand multifamily direct install programs. That's anticipated to reach roughly 2,000 customers. The total, of course, is $30 million. Next slide, please. Our recommendation to the board at this time is to, 1, authorize the CEO to implement SVC generation rate changes effective January 1, 2023, to increase from 1% to 4% discount to PG&E's new generation rates, and authorize the CEO to allocate $19 million to fund an electrification discount and expansion of the low-income multifamily direct install program. Thank you.
All right. That was a lot to take in. I thank you all for presenting it, and we will go to questions from the board to begin. And Director Rennie, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. So the way my mind works is before deciding how to spend potential additional budget surplus, I want to test the confidence of our forecasted budget surplus. We, as everybody I think realizes, live in a world that's not very, we operate in a world that's not very sure, right? There's a lot of risks that go on. I want to ask whether in the new 139 million, whether we've considered some of the big number risks that come up in my mind is, every year now we have a heat wave where we don't know what day it's going to be on, and so we can't hedge for it. So we have to go out into the market when things are the most expensive and buy power to, take care of that increased load, and that could be tens of millions of dollars sometimes, which is significant in the numbers that we're talking about. So have we thought about that? And another place is in this same world of heat waves, there's more regulatory requirement to go out and buy resource adequacy kinds of things, and that market is tight, as we've seen, and there's penalties if you don't get it bought, and those numbers could become significant also. So those are two that are big. I see big numbers that can move the needle on what our budget surplus is. So when we decided 139 million, have we somehow accounted for these unexpected but most likely to occur, we don't know when, costs? I made the question long so people could understand where I was coming from a little bit, but the answer may be very simple.
Very good question, Director Rennie. So one of the things we did when we set the budget, if you remember, is we did the stress test. We went through the stress test analysis where we basically looked at factors that could have material impact on our financials. It so happens to be the big impact is actually a price decrease because, as you know, we forward hedge our energy purchases. So our prices are locked, but if our energy cost for the most part is locked. But if prices fall, then PG&E's generation rate can fall, which can affect us competitively. And PCIA, which is a big component of what affects our customers' bill, can go up significantly. So we model both the price increase and the price decrease, and the price decrease had the most consequential impact on us, along with some potential regulatory developments, such as the new POLA requirement that can require us to post a substantial amount of cash. So we basically refreshed that analysis, the stress test analysis, the methodology that we used with the board to target a reserve level. If you remember, we increased our reserve target based on that methodology. So we went through that methodology, updated it, and said, what would the new numbers look like? So we said, okay, if that stress scenario were to occur, could we still, at a minimum, be able to have at least 120 days of working cash if this extreme but plausible event were to happen? So based on that analysis, that's how we came up with a $30 million recommendation.
Okay, you accounted for everything.
Yes, in the stress test analysis, which looks at very extreme events, but they're plausible. There are a lot of risks in the commodity markets. The commodity prices are very volatile, as you've seen with gasoline prices. As you see with natural gas right now, is trading around $35 MMBTU as opposed to $5 or $6. So,
thank you. I have a second question on not finance. So I really like, and this presentation is clear that staff's thought through this very thoroughly. One thing that I didn't see was, I really like the idea of trying to attack the multi-unit and get them to electrify. One of the challenges, and I wasn't clear whether you're just thinking about apartments where people don't own, but the owner of the whole building has control and trying to incentivize them to put these in. The other piece is condo owners that live in a multifamily unit, but now it sits in an HOA, which tend to be very conservative and not allow things. And the challenge with a heat pump is it's got to be outside the unit in order to pump heat from the outside to the inside. And a lot of HOAs, as I said, they're conservative. They don't want you just adding things on the outside somewhere on the ground or the wall or wherever. So have you thought through at all how we tackle the HOA resistance portion of the multi-unit?
So we have not yet entered into kind of detailed program design. That would certainly be something we would consider. I think the market at this point is fairly wide open, and we know that between the tenant owner relationship, between the HOA situation, this is not going to be an easy nut to crack at all, but it's one we're willing to tackle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think Director Abikoga and then Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited about these concepts, and I just had some questions regarding the budgeted amount, and for 2A, the electrification discount, it mentions a reach of up to 50,000 customers. So is that a cap? I know that we're looking at a 5-year timeline for this. My interest is, could we expand that each year? Are we capping it at 50? What happens if there's more interest? And I'm wondering if the 50,000 is estimated interest, or I don't. It's probably less than the actual number of units out in our area that are eligible. So just wondering if you can expand on what that number is.
Absolutely, 50,000 is a forecasted kind of peak level of participants, right? We modeled it as a very slow ramp from each progressive year. If it sells like hotcakes in the first year, then with any luck we'll be back asking for more. But most likely we would like to shift funds between 2A and 2B.
And then with the multifamily, I think is it $2 million for about 300 units? So we're looking at 5 times that? Is that?
So alternative 3 here has the multifamily at $9.5 million for 2,000 customers.
Okay, great. I was just thinking, like, for our city, we actually have more multifamily rental than ownership, and I think we're at something like 25,000 units of rental versus, and then 15, I think, of single family. So just trying to calculate, what our total number would be if we were to try to do every unit. So yeah, it's like a reachable number, it seems like.
It is. We think this is an achievable number. Every unit is probably not achievable. But I think where we are in the development of this technology is really early adopters still. So if we can just push the ball a little bit down the road between the two categories of participating customers, we should advance the ball significantly.
Right. Well, I do appreciate you looking at both types of customers, and all our communities are different, but we tend to be the other way of most cities, having more renters than ownership. So yeah, I appreciate your thinking that through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Lee?
Thank you. Very good presentation. Certainly very good news to hear that we have $30 million additional surplus. That's obviously good news, especially in light of the budget shortfall that the state's going to have next coming year. And that certainly would not affect us on this budget, whatever the state happens, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's certainly good news. The other news would be the staff is here recommending increasing the discount from the 2% to the 4%, which of course is very exciting. It's about $5.5 million for every percent. I guess that's we're using that as a baseline. My question would be, at that 4% discount rate, how does that compare to the current 2022 rate for the average family? And is there going to be increase, or is it going to be decrease in the rate? I think that's the bottom line for most of our customers, right? Is my rate going up, or is my rate going down?
Yeah. We're expecting to hear PG&E set rates on the 26th, coming soon, and we'll be able to make a kind of educated stab at it at that point. Currently, we're estimating a 7% increase.
So based on the current numbers we have, not the final numbers, but based on the current numbers we have, by even giving a 4% discount off the PG&E rate, the bottom line for an average consumer would be paying 7% more in 23 than 22. Is that what you're saying?
The net of 3%. And this is a wild estimate currently. We don't have firm numbers from PG&E.
Well, I understand that, right. You look like you were going to say something, but no. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, from the average consumer's point of view, it's that, oh my God, my rate's going to go up 7% now. As we know, the inflation's going up, close to 7.1%, whatever number came up yesterday was from the Fed. So certainly, that's still a significant increase for most people. So I think I'm quite concerned about that. The second thing is, on the second item, would be the electrification discount that we talked about. You laid out as $9.5 million, which is equal to the third part, which is multifamily direct discount, $9.5 million. You mentioned there's 32,000 households for that category for the electrification discount. I just do a quick division. It comes out to be about $300 if all 32,000 households available. Is that what we're looking at, giving a discount at that amount, or do we expect a higher dollar amount and with less people applying?
So again, that 32,000, we'll get there starting from zero, to theoretically 32,000 in year 5.
Oh, year 5. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe it winds up being, doing math on the fly here, maybe it winds up being twice that. that savings for a customer who's participated all the way along, or less based on your amount of time under the discount.
Do we have any cap on how much each customer will get, or it's just based on whatever?
No, this is a budgeted amount. Each year we will have the option to, we could
increase the discount from 10%, we could decrease it, we could stop it altogether.
Right.
We are not going out into the market and saying, hey, we promise this discount for you and we're signing you up. And yeah, and it's important, we think, that we do that because we're not sure what other new rates are going to come along over a few years. We may want to alter this strategy and put more wood behind some different arrows. But for right now, we think this is a really good way to get a message out into the market and really cut our teeth on an alternative way of discounting.
Great, thank you. Now, the third question I have is regarding the third category, the multifamily direct install of $9.5 million again. And we are looking at approximately about 2,000 households. And I did a quick division there, about 4,750. Is that what we're expecting? That's a pretty significant amount, but obviously when you reinstall something, that's going to cost a lot of money to do it too. Do we plan on having a cap on that type of a program, or?
So I'd say that's a conservative estimate. We will have to include marketing and administration and some other costs in there.
Right.
But the intent is to really kind of push that forward.
As fast as possible, obviously, right? And of course, the more money, the better. But at the end of the day, it's also, if you put too high of dollar amount, then this might exhaust too quickly.
Yes.
All right. And I think that's all the question I have, but great job on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to Director Chua, if you still have a question, I wanted to clarify something. The 7% increase that you were asking, thank you for that question. Is that net of the 4% reduction, or is it the
So the minute you get into this, it starts to get complicated. But what we're seeing is across the board, Gen and T&D, the average electric customer, residential customer, would see an increase on the order of 7%. And again, as much as everything's changing right now, that could move around a little bit, but that's what we're seeing. Our portion of that, in super round numbers, roughly half. So think about that 4% really translating maybe to a 2% reduction out of that 7% increase.
It's how the math works is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
But our customers would not get the full brunt of the 7%.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate the clarification. I see, yes, Director Klein?
Sure, and definitely it was kind of going back to that rate increase from PG&E and how we respond to it. And I think this 4% is something that we should be heralding, and I think we talked about it last year, how we roll this out, because it is that balance, as Director Lee was saying, of okay, we're trying to meet, we're lessening the impact on those customers as far as that's concerned. But the rates are increasing. And so, I do think it's important from a messaging standpoint, and I know that we will finalize this sometime 3 weeks after, but I do think that that's really important. And we talked last year about messaging, or beginning of this year. What's the plan as far as messaging, assuming that this is approved tonight?
Sorry, I've got the obstacle here.
Director Klein.
So currently, we're planning a press release to kind of explain what we know when we know it. So expect in the new year press release that explains what's happening with rates, not only in percentages but in real numbers, along with kind of the reasoning behind it, and should you approve our recommendation tonight, those additional details as well.
Okay, and then as far as the low-income multifamily direct install program, what is that? What are those funds covering? So is it the actual install? Is it the permitting? Because it depends on, and at a certain point, if you can get a full HOA to convert a building, there's a lot more bang for the buck, conceivably from a permitting standpoint. But it depends on how those funds are allocated and distributed. What's the plan?
So there's some uncertainty there, and that's why it's such a conservative number at this time.
Okay.
We do plan to kind of get deeper in the details and come up with partnerships. I'd like to include our trade allies as well. So there's significant planning to do on the detailed program design still.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Tyson, Vice Chair Tyson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on some of this discussion about messaging and public reaction, because my understanding is that the recent cold weather and extremely high natural gas prices, that's going to be the story that's going to hit the news in the next month or two. And so I think when we're thinking about messaging, how do we distance ourselves from that and speak of our good works on electricity?
And specifically the potential grants for the conversion, not only of gas to electric for heating and cooling, but the resistant heating systems. I mean, that to me is absolutely a game changer. I mean, I just think that people who need to know and understand will really get this, and we've got a lot of nonprofit organizations and Section 8 housing property owners that would be really well served by that program. So I think that's a very, very strong message that combines. Director Mekachek?
Thank you. Couple of observations and comments. One of the observations is I saw no portable heaters in the photos, but I think there's a lot of portable heaters that are used in rooms where people don't have sufficient heat. And I'm kind of wondering out loud how the programs would affect those people. The other thing, and this is probably on a larger perspective, and I know that you're working on the program. When I see a lot of multifamily, there's not necessarily individual meters. A lot of multifamily, your electricity is included. A lot of HOAs now have sub-meters because the HOA does the metering, the sub-metering, and puts it through to the fees. But I'm concerned, and I'm not asking you to solve it now, just to think about this, that how does the landlord may take the savings versus passing them on to the tenants that we're trying to help through electrification and lower rates. So just a couple of observations and things to look for in the futures as you refine these. And then the other thing is, I'm a little concerned when I see the folks that were the early adopters, so they got solar. They're so, and it's been going for over 10 years now, and they're starting to see a degradation in their output. And they're also the same folks that have EVs. And now all of this is kind of working against those early adopters that help drive down the cost of EVs, that help drive down the cost of solar. And now, they've got, for lack of a better term, stranded assets almost, and they can't take advantage of this. And in fact, if you've got people that have multiple EVs or, 2 or 3 or 4, then those folks, they are getting high rates because they don't qualify for these lower rates because their baseline is multiple X of what is allowed. So they get kicked onto higher rates. And I'm kind of getting into the weeds here a little bit and maybe into only a few percentage. But I think that rates are super complex, and how you piece this together will take a lot of thought and analysis. And I'm glad we're getting more data expertise on staff. So those are just a couple of comments, and you can opine on those as you.
I think you're talking about unintended consequences and those that are left behind. We had a slide about those left behind, so I think we're much right on the market there. Yes, I have Director Flygor.
Thanks, Chair. I see Director Armendariz with her hand raised. So do we want to?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, she's not showing on my screen, so I apologize,
thank
Director.
you. Thank you to both of you. I was worried about that. I wasn't sure if that's what was happening or if we have a very, engaged board. But I don't have a question. I do have more of a comment, an observation. I want to just appreciate the way that this is being proposed, the way that it was created, that it includes folks who are historically left out, right? Who economically cannot keep up with those who, can afford put in their solar panels, buy their electric vehicle, right? So the working people of our family and of our community and the working poor. So I just want to appreciate that and recognize that in terms of the equity lens that we're using here. And also say that the bulk of the multifamilies in our area aren't HOA, don't have HOAs. And I don't know the numbers on that, but I know that the vast majority of them don't have an HOA, and that renters themselves, the PG&E accounts or the, clean energy accounts that they have would be under their own name, not the landlord's name. It's kind of rare for it to be included in the rent in our area, at least. Because we just went through something similar where a number of landlords and apartment owners came and spoke to our council. And so I became more familiar with that. But again, I think this is a great way to propose things and make sure that those who are historically not forgotten and who are most impacted by climate change are taken into account, right, and allowed to have a little impact positively as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies, Director. I switched screens so I can see your hand better. Apologies. Director Flygor.
Thank you, Chair. And my comment is a good segue from Rebecca's comments because, recognizing that every city is different and all our communities are different and the different residential buildings in our communities may vary as well. I would appreciate when staff is doing the deep dive into the program design to see whether or not, however the programs get developed, they factor in or different communities. And I do support having the emphasis be on, renters and lower income families and communities. But my bias, and I always let Girish know this as well, I do like the programs that earmark a certain amount of the limited funds we have for different cities, because there is a cap on each of these programs. And some cities may be just slower, and their communities may just be slower to getting around to taking advantage of these great programs. So as you design these programs, if it's possible to identify certain sums for each cities, I think sometimes that is more effective in having a broader application. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Flygor. And we'll finish the questions and then go to the public for any questions or comments, and then come back to council, back to the board. Yes, Director Abikoga.
Thank you for a second bite. Regarding the multifamily direct install program, I was wondering, are we prioritizing like 100% affordable housing projects or doing special outreach to try to get those types of developments to do to take advantage of the program, since that really aligns with the SVCEA, our equity priority, and the SVCEA 3 and 4. So wondering what we're doing.
Not yet. I'd like to look at the data and make sure we're serving the right communities, right, the right product to the right person at the right time.
Okay. Well, the 100% affordables are usually the income are 60% AMI and lower. So it seems like that would be an ideal group of category of.
And I will segue on that, if I may, because I think one of the lessons that the data will help determine is it's the age of the building, the type of system that they have, and then looking at what different rental rates are. Are they Section 8? Are they low income? A lot of the 100% affordable buildings are more new and might have newer technology. So I think that's all part of the data. I know early on, there was some good data on the age of buildings, the type of construction, and I'm sure they're now going to be able to come up with the data on the types of systems that are in them. So I think what all our questions have had consistently is understanding the audience, the marketplace, the unintended consequences, and the opportunities.
You're absolutely right. Our community, we do have long existing affordable housing developments, so I'm thinking from my lens, and I could see that being a big category.
And remember, we're all elected officials. We all represent our constituents individually as well as the whole. Okay. Are there any comments from, do you have another question? When we wait, and let's move on if we may. Do we have any questions from the audience? And I see a speaker coming up.
Hello, Bruce Carney, Mountain View resident, chair of Carbon Free Mountain View, board member of Carbon Free Silicon Valley. I'm going to ask the board to do something that is challenging, which is to not approve the staff recommendation. I would ask you to approve option 1, the 2% reduction, to leave more money for programs. When a customer looks at their PG&E bill, all 9 or 10 pages of it, it's filled with numbers, many of them going out to 5 decimal places. There's no way that someone can understand whether they're receiving a 2% or a 4% discount from PG&E's rate. It's simply the data is not on the bill. And by increasing the discount to 4% after it's historically been 1%, I'm concerned about the potential for a ratcheting effect, which is that you'll never be able to reduce it back to 1% again without getting a black eye. Many other CCAs have higher discounts than 1%. But I don't think they have the kind of high-quality programs that SVCE has created, and I hope will continue to create, that will actually bend the carbon curve. We really haven't seen data on how much the carbon curve is bending in SVCE territory. I would love to see that data. But my feeling is it's probably not bending fast enough, and it's probably not even close to bending fast enough. So that is what I think the mission of SVCE is at this point in its maturity, is to come up with California leading, nation leading, world leading programs for bending the carbon curve with a focus on decarbonization, not replacing one inefficient electric appliance with a more efficient electric appliance. That doesn't bend the carbon curve at all. Other organizations, agencies, nonprofits should work on that. Saving people money by getting the more efficient appliances is a worthy goal, but I don't think it should be SVCE's goal. So, let's see, can I think of another argument to emphasize what I've already said? No, I won't. Let me just repeat the ask. I would like you to approve this new electrification rate. I would like you to approve option 1. And one question that wasn't answered that I hope one of you will ask staff is, was the 2 or 4% rate supposed to apply to commercial customers or just to residential customers? And if it's just to residential customers, what's the story that you'll tell to the commercial customers about why their discount is lower? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a staff answer to that one question?
Yes, the 4% is across the board, so it's for all customers.
All customers.
And our discount rate historically has been between 1% and 9%. It's probably averaged 3%, 3 to 4% over the course of our term. So. Yeah.
So thank you for that last comment, because I was going to mention that I know it has varied, and we've had the same issue when we've gone down to 3%. could we come back to 1%? And the board has done that as is necessary. I'm going to take a little bit of liberty here and say that everything that Mr. Carney said is of value to be discussed. We did discuss it at the executive committee. And I believe that the consensus was that we have to balance how to best use that money. And if our goal is to change the carbon curve, we also want to be sure that electricity doesn't get a bad name. It doesn't discourage people from switching to all electric, doesn't discourage people from understanding the value of electricity. So I think we were balancing it, and that's where I think staff might have even mentioned a different option early on. We came up with supporting option 3 because we thought it met a variety of needs for our customers, basically. Helped us give a good message going forward, supporting electrification. And I think there's another point I want to make about just the value of having a dialogue. And yes, it's infinitesimally different, and you're right, the bill doesn't really reflect it enough for people to understand it, but that's something we can do in our messaging, and I think that goes directly to Director Lee's comments about what is the impact of new electric rates and why, and all of that. So I think we had at the executive committee a good discussion on exactly that point. Should we go to option 1? And there was some discussion to support option 1, and we basically worked it back to 3. Director, 4, sorry. Option 3, yeah. Okay. Director Rennie?
Thank you. And my question is on this subject. So Mr. Carney helped explain some of my thinking, because I was thinking along the same lines, although I was thinking more option 2. To explain my thinking a little bit more, I really like the idea that we've taken 1% and we've given it to the Care Fares customer, where now you can go to 35% discount, because people can really feel that kind of discount, particularly now when inflation is really hurting everybody. I think the average customer is not going to notice a 1%. So I look at it and go, well, really, shouldn't we be doing 2%? I did listen to Director Klein, talk about marketing of it, and I started thinking, when you say I'm 1% less than PG&E, it's a yawner. I'm 2% less than PG&E, it's a yawner. Start getting to be 3, 4 starts starting to sound a little different. So I see a little bit of value in that. But I'm still myself trying to understand why we really wouldn't want to go 2. One factor that I know staff might be thinking about, and I want to understand how, this is getting to the question finally, is I know there's a limit to how fast you can ramp up even when you use outside contractors to help you do that. So is that part of your thinking to recommend 3 versus 2 or even 1, that there's a limit to how fast you can ramp up and use this money? How much of that is part of your recommendation? Is that a significant factor?
It certainly is an effect. I think our efforts alone are not going to move the market. I think the market is moving in itself, and this is a first step. I think we're going to be talking with you about real-time pricing in the near future. We're going to talk about big gaps between peak pricing and off-peak pricing, and really moving towards time of use towards more extreme rates, not larger rates, but greater differentials. That's going to be kind of the next phase here. So I think by setting up our customers, educating our customers, providing them a little head start with a discount, we really are reaching that balance where we can start to then build through kind of the next year or 2 in marketing, communications, and education towards customers that can be successful when the peak is a 10x from the off-peak.
thank you. I'm not sure I completely heard the answer to my question, so let me ask it a simpler way. If we gave you more money, would it still be sitting at the bank at the end of the period that we're talking about implementing this, basically?
So, yeah, we doubled down on programs just a few months ago. I know we're working very hard as an organization to stand up new programs and get that money out into the marketplace, and you're seeing that with things like Future Fit Homes and Buildings and so forth. This is a balancing question for you all at the end of the day. We have a lot more residential programs than commercial programs. So could a commercial customer say, hey, why are we funding a lot of residential programs right now? We'll have commercial programs. Some of our largest commercial customers have, the eligibility for special tariffs and stuff that get them some additional benefit. But yeah, the question is a really good one, and it really comes down to where do you see that balance best placed. We came up with something that tried to strike a balance in the middle somewhere between putting some additional money back in the pocket of all our customers and then using the balance to really fund a very specific move towards electrification. And yeah, it's going to be a board call on where that balance optimally is.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just make the comment that I'm not yet talked out of alternate 2.
Yes, Director Lee.
Thank you. So I just want to double check on how the plan is going to happen. Based on the staff recommendation, the idea is that, okay, the 11 million will be the amount that will be dedicated based on the 4%. And then as far as the 9.5 million will be half and half for the second and third, right, for the electrification discount and the multifamily direct install. But again, like you said, this ramp-up period, how successful it is. So my question would be, if let's say one of the two, let's say electrification discount is widely successful, we reach 9.5 really fast, while the third one, the multifamily direct, turns out takes a lot longer time, and we're not spending even half of it. Do you see a possibility of shifting some of the money from one to the other, since that's what we budgeted for, or are we going to just keep it 9.5 as the cap?
Yeah, based on the feedback from the executive committee, that's the current plan.
To allow flexibility.
To allow flexibility to move back and forth, right?
right?
So that the idea is to spend that 19 million,
Right.
either 2 or 3 or in combo would be 19. That's the idea.
Yes.
Right. And if let's say neither one of them reach that number, the surplus would come back to the reserve. Is that how that works?
I think the board would make a decision as we get updates from the programs on how fast the money is being spent. And that's actually one of the things that I know the programs group is actually working on, as to how to identify the expenditure over what period of time, what pot of money, and to see how successfully it's being spent and make decisions. We haven't had so much money put into the programs until recently.
Right.
And I think staff just did a very salient point, which is the 17 million that we did just double down on programs.
Yes, that's right.
So again, the context, and we will be getting more information, more data.
Good, thank you. I mean, this is a great plan, but as we all know, nothing ever goes according to plan. So that's why I see what if. Thank you.
Says the Navy man. Any other comments from the board? And I will switch back so I can see all the hands. I see no other hands, no other comments from the board. Oh, yes, please.
Are we at comments now?
Yes, we are in comments now.
Wonderful. Yeah. I want to thank the board for all the questions they have asked. I was following the conversation and the discussion, and it kept me thinking, all great questions. I do feel, firstly, thank you for a fabulous staff report and a great presentation. There's a lot to absorb, as Chair Gibbons said. I personally do think, based on what I continued to reread as everybody was making their comments and asking questions, I think it's a good place to be. It's a balanced approach. I appreciate the flexibility that has been built in, and I think it's even called out in one of these places, that the flexibility would help you adapt over time. And of course, as you said, as the implementation happens, you can come back to the board. But addressing the needs and keeping the interest from our mission for all customers, the electrification, as well as the multifamily with the focus on the direct install there. I actually like the staff recommendation. I want to thank the executive committee for spending the time that I'm now picking up that you spent to go through all the details to land at a place where I am quite comfortable with what is being proposed. That doesn't say that I am not open to changing my position based on more comments that I hear. I do appreciate somebody making me pause and think about why not go with alternate one. Mr. Carney, you pointed out, and Director Rainey, as he said, alternate two, you helped me see through how a customer would react. One, no, not a big deal percent discount, 2%, not such a big deal, but at 3 or 4% now we are talking. And messaging is very important, as Director Klein pointed out, always. It just comes down to that, how we convey to our customers. And a comment was made earlier that we have, I believe Director Flagor said, and Chair Gibbons also said, we have different cities and different customer base from an SVCE perspective to look at. And to keep the interest going, it's the balance that it all comes down to. And the long-term mission of this group is to proceed in a manner that we keep on reducing the carbon footprint. And sorry, I had one more thought. Yes, you pointed out, I think, Adam, you mentioned, and I also read it somewhere, that at the next phase, the conversation is going to be about peak versus off-peak pricing. And that is very important. I will personally share, with the differential not being that much, convenience sometimes, I look at the time and the convenience says, okay, I got to take care of this now. Once that delta changes dramatically between the peak versus off-peak, I think that will also help. But keeping the long-term vision of all the programs that you have in mind and how they will all add up, I personally am very happy supporting alternate 3. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, then the chair would accept a motion. Director Mekachuk?
One final comment, and then I'll make a motion. Mr. Kearney, I hear what you're saying absolutely, and I think that that is in our mission. And what I would really like to see is some data on the natural gas sales in the SVCE territory and the electricity sales, so that we can see the natural gas going down and the impact on electrification. And I like the blend that we've got in option 3, because we've got to make electrification more attractive. And I think that's absolutely critical. So as I look at the different alternatives, I would like to make a motion to adopt alternative 3.
I'll second.
Okay. Director Rennie.
Thank you. So I will support the motion. You know, as I mentioned, I like to lean towards adding more money into our incentive programs. I do as I mentioned, I am concerned that we really need to give it a little more time to ramp up. So in the future, I will continue to look to add more money to these programs as I think staff gets the capacity to be able to deal with it. I did want to add one other comment that I hadn't touched on, is I really like the idea of a discount for electrification. That isn't an idea we had specifically targeted before, and I did mention that portion of this plan. There's lots of good parts in the plan, but I wanted to highlight that I really like that particular idea, because I do hear a lot of, why do I want to electrify? Electricity's just going to get more expensive, and well, you're already counteracting that argument. So I just wanted to add that I really like that new idea in this plan.
And I'll just comment too that this was a very complex presentation with a lot of decision-making points. So we focused on one that makes a lot of sense for us and our constituents. That comment by Director Rennie is much to the point. There are many, many facets here that deserve a lot of attention and support. Thank you, staff, for doing that. And with that, we have, Director Lee? Yes.
Just one final point is that at the end of the day, we are voting really a rate increase for our customers. That's the bottom line to most people. And so the more we can do to, obviously help, given all the gas prices, all the inflationary things going on, definitely we don't want our customers to ever go 7% on the rates. And we are able to do that by what we're doing tonight. So maybe it's going to be 4% really, or 5%, whatever the final rate for PG&E. So I just want to keep that in mind. So we are trying to do that, to buffer it. And that's what makes SVC a better choice than the other company. And I'll mention the name, but we all know what it is. So I think I just want to make sure that's why we are, this balanced approach, I think, is the right thing for now. And again, let's see how the money is being spent, right, on those two other programs as it goes on. And if we're able to burn it all, then great. But if not, then maybe there's further adjustment.
Right.
So that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you so much. So I'm going to just read the motion for Director Mekachuk's first and a second by Director Lee. It is adopting Resolution 2022-39, authorizing the CEO to implement Silicon Valley Clean Energy generation rate changes effective January 1st, 2023, or within 3 weeks thereafter, increasing from 1% to 4% discount to PG&E's new generation rates. Authorize the CEO to allocate $19 million to fund A, an electrification discount, and B, expansion of the low-income multifamily direct install program, each at $9.5 million, but funding flexible between A and B. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you. Chair Gibbons.
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Director Rennie.
Aye.
Mekachuk.
Aye.
Abekoga.
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Klein.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Way.
Aye.
Armendariz.
Aye.
Thank you. Flagger.
Yes.
Chua.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries with Director Martinez-Beltran absent.
Thank you, and you're making me work for my last meeting. We are now on item number 5. This is an update to the hybrid meeting requirements following the termination of the emergency order, and the presentation will be by Kevin Armstrong, Deputy Director of Administrative Services. And this is a discussion item.
Good evening, Chair, Directors. We're here to talk a little bit about the changing landscape for meetings for elected bodies such as this. So we'll dive right in. Next slide, please. As I'm sure you're all familiar, the governor announced in October that the state of emergency for COVID would end at the end of February 2023. Starting in January, we'll have a new alternative for hosting meetings, which is AB 2449. The bottom line is basically that at the end of that state of emergency, our current rules under AB 361 will end, and we'll have options to use AB 2449 or return to traditional Brown Act rules. Next slide, please. Under AB 2449, a quorum of board members must be in person at one location in the territory. And I lead with that because that's the most significant restriction on utilizing that new set of rules. If that quorum is met, then there are just cause reasons that members could attend remotely without publicly noticing that location. So there is this option in the case of emergencies to allow from, attendance from home or someplace that you don't want to publicly disclose. Next slide, please. Traditional Brown Act rules, we would go back to the way things were. You could teleconference. There wouldn't be a limit. I missed stating that, but under 2449, there are limits to the number of times you can utilize those exceptions. But with traditional Brown Act rules, you can meet multiple times. The key thing is that you do need to have a quorum within the service territory. And so we could continue to meet from here, from your community centers and city halls in your own member communities, You could certainly even meet from your own home. You would just have to publicly notice that and make it available. Next slide, please. So we'll return to this table, but I want to call this out as a pretty detailed comparison of the three sets of rules. AB 361 is the set that's expiring, AB 2449, the new set starting on January 1, and then the traditional Brown Act rules. Next slide. So with all of that in mind, we do have a recommendation, but this is not an action item, so it's really just for you to discuss on how you'd like to conduct future meetings, and for us to take feedback on how we could facilitate that. And that's really to return to traditional Brown Act meeting requirements and rules, to utilize Cupertino Community Hall here as a central meeting place, and to work with your member communities to identify alternate locations. And we've begun those discussions. The city of Monte Sereno has very kindly stepped up to offer their site as a potential meeting location, and we've reached out to some others, particularly in South County, given the distance, to see if those locations would be available for evening meetings. For Brown Acted committee meetings, we anticipate using our SVCE offices, as we've done in the past, but you could also, again, attend from an office or a city facility somewhere in the service territory. Next slide. We'd be happy to talk about the details on that legislative comparison slide that my colleague Benna put together, along with some of the stipulations with each of those, but I know it's getting a little bit late and you had a lengthy discussion, so really just opening it up to hear your feedback on comments on preferences and any questions of clarification that we can help address.
Thank you. I'll just offer that we did have a good discussion on this at the executive committee, and we came to a conclusion that the new legislation is not as flexible as we had hoped it would be. So, questions? Any comments? Any questions? All right, we'll close the council, the board discussion. I see none. No hands raised. Got to get to the right screen. And any comments from members of the audience? Seeing none. Anyone online? We have none. We'll bring it back for discussion from the board, and this is what staff is asking for. Does anyone have any thoughts on, they've already contacted various cities to discuss what the options are. But basically, if I can summarize correctly, the existing Brown Act may be the most practical for all of us. And the primary thing is if you choose to not come to the board meeting here, you'd have to notice where you are going to be. Okay. And with the new law, there's all kinds of odd little timing and constraints and numbers of times and percentages of people, and you'd have to come up with it in advance and all of that. So it wasn't as helpful as we had hoped. Director Rennie?
So this is, we've talked about this at BACMed quite a bit, actually, and even maybe sponsoring a bill to try to do more. But this is the first time I've heard that you could choose between AB 2449 and Brown Act. And I'm surprised that hadn't come up before. And if we can choose, can we switch back and forth between them? How does this choosing work? So if we had some emergency situation, which makes it easier, could we switch to that if normally we're practicing the old Brown Act? And how's that going to work?
It's our understanding in consultation with council that is the case. I think we would want to have a process or protocol to decide when to exercise meeting under 2449, because that would compel a quorum to meet in one single physical location. And that would be the part that you'd want to have agreement on in advance of the meeting to allow for the relaxation of attendance on the behalf of other directors.
Chair Gibbons, if I could respond as legal counsel.
Yes.
Just to clarify, AB 2449 doesn't so much require an election. It's an amendment to the traditional Brown Act rules that really is an exception under extraordinary circumstances for members to occasionally participate remotely. I think to the extent there is any election is whether or not you want to make a decision that you do not want board members to utilize that because of all of the variables that staff would have to track. So if you have a remote and hybrid meeting platform already set up, do you want to have a policy that tells members ahead of time that they should not be, that you do not want members to surprise the board and show up in that hybrid format and try to elect to use it on that day, and then have, staff is required to make sure that all of the conditions of AB 2449 have been met, so as not to have a Brown Act violation.
Thank you. That's Tricia Ortiz, our general counsel. Thank you very much for that input. And Director Lee.
Yeah, I am personally very disappointed what 2449 has when it was passed. There was other legislation that was certainly more sensible. This certainly is exactly what we don't want in government, red tapes. We're talking about how many meetings have you been gone, how many people are going to be there, do I need to look at the astrological chart to see what's going on? It's getting ridiculous. I'm really not in favor of, just want to share my point. And I think the traditional Brown Act certainly have issues, but I think we are all familiar with it. You have to give proper notices where you will be. Let's say you're in Sacramento for that for a different meeting for CSAC, let's say, or a League of Cities meeting. Well, you know that you have to pop your door open, make your room publicly available, post the agenda outside, and I think many of us have done it, and it's not that complicated. It's easy to do, and I think that would be my preferred way of doing that. Thank you.
I'm going to Director Abikoga, Director Klein, and Director Walia.
Thank you, Chairs, and thank you for the presentation. So you mentioned you're looking for other locations. So I just wanted to make sure I got what you're trying to say. So this will be our regular meeting place, but I guess I'm mostly concerned about the folks from South County. It is a drive. So are we looking at someplace, either Morgan Hill or Gilroy, perhaps their city hall that we can use and notice it there, but allow the South County folks to be able to call in from that location?
Yes, we've started those conversations with staff in those communities to allow exactly that.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I agree. 2449 is not very helpful, and in light of the spike of COVID cases, it's interesting. I was thinking that what it doesn't allow us to do is if we get COVID, we can't call in from home, and right, unless you want other people to come to your house, and they're not going to come to your house if you have COVID. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think having to go back to the traditional noticing is the way to go. But I do at least appreciate that we have that now with the beauty of Zoom and virtual, the opportunity to offer some of the folks in farther distances to call from a location closer to them. Thank you.
Director Klein.
So, and I'll just clarify, 2449 does allow you to not show up, call in remotely to a meeting if you get COVID or if you test positive the morning of. And so no noticing is really needed. You just need to deal with that from the meeting standpoint.
We'll get clarification from
Please clarify that, because as far as I understand, you can, the day of, as long as the quorum is in the room.
That's the challenge, though.
Hmm?
That's the challenge. If you expect a quorum, but someone gets COVID that morning, and that person's supposed to be here to make that quorum.
Yes.
Then
you're out of
that's the only question.
So if I may, we could probably have some additional feedback from our council.
Sure.
It's correct under AB 2449, if somebody has COVID, they could, the day of the meeting, there are provisions to request remote participation. But one of the the pitfalls to AB 2449, as was mentioned by one of the board members, is you wouldn't know ahead of time if more than enough members were going to make that election, so as to then eliminate your quorum appearing in person at that meeting. And at that point, you wouldn't have been prepared because it was a surprise that more than one member or too many members were appearing remotely, and you you wouldn't be in compliance with the Brown Act because you wouldn't have a quorum.
Okay.
Correct. So thank you for that. You know, from my standpoint, this applies more to our councils, and you know, I think it becomes very important. Here we have the option of alternates, and so you know, and how that plays into the quorum also changes things. That being said, I do think that the standard Brown Act has value, trying to get everybody, the quorum of this body in this room as the designated location conceivably is difficult on a specific night to make sure that we're meeting 2449. That being said, you know, for me, I still think 2449 has value because I think it's that one exception. But as long as we have alternates that are ready to stand in for us, I think, you know, the standard Brown Act works fine. So, you know, in my mind, 2449 does have value, but because of the emergency, the last minute emergencies, the child that's sick that you have to stay home with, you know, there are emergencies that you would still like to make your presence known at this meeting, and you know, at least for our council, we're moving forward with that permanently, as currently is allowed by 2449. I do think that there is, we'll see what the legislature does in 2023. There's additional requests to change that, and ultimately I do think it has value, but I think having multiple locations within the county does suffice from a Brown Act standpoint. It makes it much easier for people to be there, whether or not it's the primary or the alternate if the primary can't be there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Director Ali, I believe you're next.
Thank you. So, Director Abikoga and Director Klein, you pretty much raised the line of thought I had. How are we going to handle that scenario? Because with the spike of COVID cases, I'm expecting once this ends, the executive order ends end of Feb, we quite likely will run into that scenario. So that means pretty much the day off, we'll have to ask the alternate which doesn't happen that frequently right now. Somebody will have to make that person available. Should we reconsider the AB 2449 from that angle? I would just want us to think through that scenario, because that looks more realistic to me today than when I was considering this 2 months ago.
So let me ask staff and say this to staff. My understanding is that we, as a board, could provide direction that the normal meetings will be done under the existing Brown Act. Mm-hmm. However, there is the potential for utilizing the new option on an emergency basis to allow for if someone is sick or whatever. I think what we're asking ourselves is, do we want to have a normal operation of the board under, 2449? And I think the constraints there are fairly significant, and they require a lot of red tape, and they aren't as generous as you think, because I think there's a 3-time limit. Mm-hmm. So it's not as if we can do it. The current Brown Act is more flexible. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the kind of feedback that we're looking for. And I'll just ask the public if there are any questions or comments from the public. Seeing none in the room and none online, we'll bring it back to the board for some final comments here. And Director Chua.
Chair Gibbons, if I may, please.
Yes, please.
You mentioned emergency basis. Could we clarify that?
Say that.
You mentioned on an emergency basis we could switch from traditional Brown Act to AB 2449.
That is my understanding from what the council, what our general counsel has said, that on the day of a meeting, if there is no director or alternate director to come to the meeting, then we can be the person who wants to utilize AB 2047, 2044, whatever. Sorry, numbers are not in my head tonight. Can ask to have that done.
so one director, that was the clarification I was looking for. Does that apply to the whole body at that moment, or does that apply only to one or two directors?
I will ask the council to answer that question. You need a
Yes,
quorum
thank you.
here.
Correct, Chair Gibbons, you're correct. Under AB 2449, you will always need a quorum in person at a single location. So it's worth pointing out that if you do go to a model where you'd have kind of satellite locations, and you did not have a quorum in a single location, somebody would not have the ability to participate via AB 2449. So it's important to clarify that AB 2449 is not an election that you're making. It's an amendment to the Brown Act. But what it is I think one of the discussion that staff is requesting is, do you want to have a policy that that discourages the use of AB 2449 because of the concerns about implementing it correctly? Or if you do move to a satellite location method of meeting, you wouldn't even have the option of AB 2449 available for somebody to participate on under the just cause or emergency situation, because you wouldn't have the body in a singular location.
So to follow up, who is going to make the amendment to the Brown Act on the day of? How does that happen?
So first question is, would we give direction to staff to write a policy discouraging the use of it? That's part of the discussion tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part is, if we do allow it, how does that take place? And I think the secretary of the board would have to validate whether there is a quorum going to be in place at one time. So I don't think there has to be a resolution or board action. It just has to be determined. And I think the board clerk would notify the board members that this has been requested, and we need to confirm. And it's not to be set up for multiple people to take advantage of it the morning of.
Right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Okay. And Director Mekachuk.
Yes, I've got a question for council. As I understand it, let's just say that Gilroy or Morgan Hill set up a meeting there to dial in remotely to the meeting here, and they provided 72 hours notice, and the public were allowed to go there and make comments. I understood that is added to the quorum in this location.
No.
No?
You could do that under traditional Brown Act rules, under the Brown Act as it exists. But if you do that, you will now have created a situation where your body, a quorum of your body, perhaps is not participating from a singular location, in which case the extraordinary remote participation rules for AB 2449 would not apply, because it's a condition that a quorum of the body is in person at a singular location.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
So, Director Chua, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question to our legal counsel, Ms. Ortiz. On the 2449, there is a provision that says a limit on the exercise of teleconference provisions to no more than 3 consecutive months or 20% of the meetings in a calendar year. Can we override that with our own policy just to remove that? And also another question is, the way I understand that you said, this 2449 is an addendum, an amendment to the Brown Act. So that means we have to follow it. Am I correct?
So you are correct that there are limits on the number of times that you can appear, a board member can appear remotely under AB 2449.
Mm-hmm.
It is an amendment to the requirements of to the Brown Act. I wouldn't say you're required to follow it. I see it as additional authority for means of meeting remotely. So you're going to be required to not have remote meetings as a general rule unless you follow the noticing requirements of the traditional Brown Act. AB 2449 is just it's amendments to the provisions which allow members to occasionally participate remotely if there's just cause or an emergency, and you can't override the state law limits on the use of that.
We can?
Cannot.
Yeah. Cannot. That's what I thought. Yes. So that's very unattractive to me in terms of the number of limits. You don't know how many times you're going to need to work remotely. That's my concern. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I think, Director Rennie, if you can, because I think this will come up in January as well.
So my thought is we shouldn't really discourage this unless we're going to set this up differently than we think. It sounds like a really great idea to set up a remote location under the normal Brown Act for our South County members because they have a really long way to drive. If that's the only one we're going to set up, that's only 2 members missing from a quite large body, so it should be easy to have a quorum here. We're decently centralized that most people can get here without needing another location. Maybe Milpitas is a little bit far, and do we set one up just for them? But I'm thinking you have 2 members out of a 13-member board or something like that. It's still pretty darn easy that our normal setup is we're way over quorum, and if somebody does get COVID the day of or something like that, we can easily switch to using the 2449 and they can still participate from home. What it will do is now force those people that are in Morgan Hill to be counting one of their consecutive 3 or one of their 20% per year items, because that's the critical thing is you
Right.
can't do more than 20% of, and I doubt any of us are, hopefully none of us are going to get sick more than 20% of the meetings, or hopefully 3 consecutive in a row, or we'll just have to miss at that point. The only danger is we're now putting them on the people that were normally in Morgan Hill, but that's still a useful thing to be able to do.
So I'm going to offer, I think, a clarification, which is what you were describing is if there was a location in Morgan Hill or Gilroy, for example, that can already be done under the Brown Act. So there's no change in that whatsoever. The advantage is that it can be noticed as a public address. The only time for me to see where the new regulation would be of somewhat help is to prevent someone from having to post their home address. That's the only advantage. So the Brown Act, as it stands, provides all those opportunities.
But you forget that it's got to be done 48 hours in advance. So if it's a last minute...
72 hours in advance.
Okay, so even harder to post if you're going to get sick and contribute under the Brown Act.
So we can take a quick show of hands. I'm supportive of, and I think I've heard the majority supportive of, utilizing the standard Brown Act for the conduction of all of our meetings. That does not preclude any member from notifying the clerk the morning of or the day before a board meeting saying that they would like to utilize 2449, yeah, I'll get there, if necessary. Yes. Yes, Director Klein and then Director Mekchuk.
And I totally agree. The one comment on that is if there is not a quorum of our board in this room on the evening of that meeting, they can't attend. And that's kind of basically part of our policy.
That's part of the
policy that we're coming up with.
Right, and that's where the clerk of the board, who does do a polling before each meeting to confirm that we do have a quorum available, is part of our normal business.
Yeah.
So I see no change in that process.
Thank you.
Director Mekachuk?
I think we can make this work, and I think Director Rennie said it easily. We've got, and perhaps it was you, Director Klein, that with alternates, even at pretty close to last minute, we can have someone attend in our absence.
Mhm.
So I think we can make a quorum work, and I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Yes, Director
I
Leah.
agree. Just for clarification now or in January, under AB 2449, I'm seeing no more than 3 consecutive months or 20% of meetings in a calendar year. Then it says only 2 times a year for just cause reasons. So is it 2 or 3 months? I don't need the answer now.
Okay. Staff can come back and answer those
That's
kinds
what
of
I'm saying,
things.
in January, if they can provide clarification.
When they come back with a policy. And Director Amendaris, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I recently traveled for my 9-to-5 job to Los Angeles and zoomed in to our council meeting from there. And they noticed it, and they put the address there of the retreat center on our agenda for the public, and all I had to do was put the agenda out on the entrance to the retreat center as well. It was really easy, simple to do, and we have the technology now, the equipment to do it. And so that's why I think if the Brown Act affords us that, ability, I don't think that it should be too complicated or hard. That's all.
Thank you very much. And with that, if staff has enough input?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you very
seeing
much, Chair and Directors.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6, which is Silicon Valley Clean Energy information on the update of the 2023 Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board elections. This is a discussion. It will be coming from our board clerk, Andrea Pisano. And I think it's consistent with the policies that we've implemented and practices from previous years.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, directors. So as Chair Gibbons mentioned, this is consistent with our operating rules and regulations. This is really a reminder for some of you. It might be new to some, and for some it may not apply for those who are leaving us. But we're going to review the selection process and timeline for our 2023 selections of our chair, vice chair, and our various committees. So come January, next month, we'll be selecting our chair, vice chair, and executive committee members. So tomorrow, I will be sending out a call, if you will, for letters of interest for those of you who would like to serve as our chair or vice chair for next year, in addition to a request for anybody interested to join our executive committee to also let me know. And we'll make these selections again at our January meeting, at our annual meeting. I wanted to pause a little bit on the executive committee because we will have 3 members who are leaving that group. So we have 3 vacancies. This is made up of 5 primary directors. Typically includes our chair and vice chair. And again, we have 3 vacancies. So please, if you're interested, let us know. With any of these committees, if you have questions about content or frequency, please reach out offline if needed. So come February, we're going to select our additional committees. We have our Finance and Administration Committee, our Audit Committee, and the newly created 2023 Legislative Committee that was approved this evening. So I'll be distributing, I call it a recap. I included an example in your board packets this evening. It kind of lays out exactly what these committees cover within their groups, how many people are in them, and then membership as well. So our executive committee allows for our primary directors to participate. However, our finance and admin and audit committee also allow our alternate directors. So if you have an alternate director who may be interested, please pass on the info. But you'll see shortly in the timeline, I'll be sending out this information as well to everybody. So here it is. Tomorrow I'm going to be sending out that request. Come January, we'll make selections for chair, vice chair, and the executive group. Then that following day, I'll be sending out written instructions. So you'll see we'll have a little bit of turnover come January. So I'll be sending out this information so that hopefully our new members are going to get it as well, and they'll have an opportunity to let us know if they're interested in joining these committees. And then come February, we'll make those remaining committee assignments. And that's it. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And any questions this evening are fine, but also you can reach out to Andrea after the meeting if you need to do that as well. Okay. I see no questions on the board here in the room, and I see no questions hand raised on the Zoom. Are there any questions in the room from the public? I see none, and no questions online. And with that, if there are no discussions, we'll just move forward with the process outlined by Andrea. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will now move on to item number 8. Where's Girish? We're just going to check and see what we want to do with that before we move in. So shall we do that quickly? All right, we'll move on. Item number 7 has been withdrawn at this time. And item number 8 is the new construction reach code update, which is a presentation by Zoe Elizabeth, Deputy Director of Decarbonization Programs and Policies.
Great. Good evening. I know I'm the only thing that stands between you and a closed session, so I will be fast. Our wonderful Bruce Carney left, but this is the carbon curve bending section of the agenda, right? So we're going to get into some updates right here. But before I say that, right, this is really, we do this every month to keep folks on track because this is really important. It's also a celebration of all of the work that you all do. So we will have some data, but just, off the cuff, we've done about 200 heat pump water heater retrofits through our programs, a lot of work. The work that you all have done by passing REACH codes will lead to tens of thousands of new electric appliances just in the next 5 years. That number will continue to grow. So this is super important, and it's really thanks to you all. So next. Quick update. Upcoming actions. For most of you, your actions are really complete. It's in staff hands now to move things to the CEC. But there still are a few of you that are doing second readings. Next slide. Okay, so here is the quick high-level summary of where we stand today. And maybe a great thing to just look at is all of those 5 orange arrows, which are recognition of big jumps in REACH code status compared to where we were last year, our last code cycle in 2019. And also note that all 13 of our member jurisdictions have been active. And so Los Altos Hills will be finalizing their vote this week, and the city of Milpitas will be finalizing in January, doing their second reading, making their final decision. The county of Santa Clara and Mountain View just finished yesterday because we just made the update of the presentation. So all of this is moving really quickly. Next slide, please. So here's another way to look at, again, the different codes that each of our jurisdictions have passed. And so you can see that introduced each week is getting a little bit smaller as more of our jurisdictions move through their second reading. Next slide, please. And again, here, a way of, again, looking at that bubble of increasing EVCI requirements is getting bigger. That green bubble moving to all electric is getting bigger than it was last time. So, yep. And Los Altos Hills, you aren't done yet. Tony, I must have missed that one, but we should never count our chickens before we hatch. Hopefully that's not bad luck. So my mistake there on the date. And the city of Milpitas, as you can see, is actually now January 17th. So they'll be our final vote. And we look forward to working with them and then working with all of your staff on just the final pieces of moving through the CEC. So thanks to all of you. Again, you really have honestly made the future healthier, safer, and more resilient because of all of the work that you have done. All of you are eligible for the $10,000 grants. Many of your staff have already submitted that letter. We also will be providing a certificate of appreciation to all to staff. And I really encourage, if you run into your chief building officials or sustainability officers, to thank them. They have been champions and really doing heroes work, and they aren't often thank you, right? They get yelled at a lot, let's be honest, working behind the counter. And so this is almost the end of REACH codes, but also really kicking off the beginning as next year we start to look at existing buildings. So thank you so much, and I'm done.
Thank you for that excellent preamble to your presentation. And are there any comments or questions? Director Lee?
Very good presentation, by the way. Thank you so much. And really great news, and I see the Milpitas is coming through, and I'll be watching that closely. You did say that all cities are eligible for 10K, which is great. Is the county eligible
Oh, yes,
too?
thank you. See, when I was speaking quickly, yes, the cities and the county.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yes.
We all want credit where
all
credit is due.
jurisdictions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, again, thank you for an excellent presentation, and it is valuable to have this update every month, it's marvelous news. It's one of the things that this organization can point to as significant accomplishments, and we do move fast even for a government agency. Thank you all. We will now adjourn this meeting to a closed session. There is a closed session agenda link, and we will come back to this meeting. But I would like to offer each board member the opportunity to say anything that they would like in the way of announcements. Is anyone? And Director Chua, you always have something to say. Director Mekachek.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
For some reason, the connectivity, my internet connectivity is very unstable. So I just want to say thank you again to our outgoing board of directors. Thank you so much. I've learned so much from all of you, and I will still really miss all of you, to be honest. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you. Same to you, Director Chua. Director Mekachek?
Yes, if you could put up those photos, please. I just wanted to let you know that I was super proud to go down to Kern County and participate in the ribbon cutting of the Rabbit Brush solar facility. And you know, when we're sitting here and we're approving a power purchase agreement and everything, it seems pretty abstract, or it's abstract to me. I mean, I know what solar panels are, but I didn't know what a solar farm was. And I went down there and I just took a couple of photos, so I'll just kind of walk you through my little day in 3 or 5 photos. So I rented an electric vehicle from Hertz, and if you don't have an EV and you have an opportunity to give one a try, I'll put in the plug for Hertz. So that was what the vehicle was that I got. Next slide, please. Here, Monica's doing a presentation, and there were 6 people that were there, or 5. Oh, plus, there were 6. And it was really interesting because you think, okay, they put this facility together. It's 1,500 acres. It's massive. It's 1/20th of the solar farms in Kern County. And, you know, they talk through the construction, the permitting process, and logistics, because this went through during when there were huge supply chain issues. And to hear them talk about it and the work that had to be done was just really, you know, it's not just they turn on the switch and away you go. So this was the presentation. Then you can see in the background from the tent there the solar panels. Next photo, please. And then here's the ribbon cutting from the folks that were actually part of the construction team. And I think we can see I think, is that you, Adam, in the photo there? Or there we go. All right. The other thing that's interesting is you see the fire chiefs there. The big issue with fire isn't the electrical panels, but it's the brush that's there for that to catch on fire. So, you know, and you can see the panels here that they're going to catch the sun, but it was kind of a demonstration. If we could go to the next photo, please. So here they are, and they actually track the sun. These are very sophisticated ones. And the other thing that I want to point out here is look at the vanishing point. Look at how far they go. This was huge. And, you know, I'm trying to get the other directors excited about attending a ribbon cutting, because I was the only one. Go to the next photo, please. Well, there we are. I had to get that photo in front of an EV. And I thought I had a picture of the stationary storage. Did I or did I not? Maybe. Oh, yeah. Sorry, that was coming back. I had to stop and supercharge. So that was kind of fun. But it's all on clean energy in Kern County. So I don't want to keep us between the closed session, but I just thought you may enjoy that and hopefully inspire you to attend ribbon cuttings.
Yes, several of us have been to I think it was Rabbit Brush, right? Slate. So that was a wonderful experience, and I totally agree. All right, we are adjourned to the closed session, and we'll return here.
Chair Gibbons, before doing that, I just wanted to make sure you called for public comment.
Oh, thank you. You are correct. I always appreciate your feedback here. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on the closed session. The public may provide comment regarding the closed session item prior to the board beginning its closed session. And as I indicated earlier, this is a conference on with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation. And I see no comments from the audience in the room. And are there any comments from the Zoom audience? Seeing none, we will consider that task taken care of, and we will move to the closed session. Thank you. of December 14th, 2022. There is nothing to report out from the closed-door session. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting to the next meeting of the board in January. Congratulations, one and all. Happy New Year.
Good night. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Bye.
Recording stopped.